Welcome to the video series tying Michigan's best trout flies. My name is Tim Neal, and just a little bit of background on me. I've been tying flies for 62 years, started in 1954 at the age of 9, and during that time I've tied literally in the neighborhood of 300,000 flies, and of course I've used some of those flies and caught many thousands of trout on them. And my intent with this video series is to show you the techniques I've used over the years and developed over the years that are easiest for me. And perhaps they'll be easiest for you. They might simplify some of your fly tying, make things a little better, make things a little easier, make things a little faster. And then the end result, you'll have more time to fish if that's the case. In addition to that, we're going to show you some ways that you might be able to save some money on fly tying materials, and especially on the two most costly items for making dry flies, hooks and hackle. So Michigan's famous for parachute flies, so that's where we're going to start. In fact, we're going to do a series of parachute flies that originated in Michigan, as well as a number of other flies that are specific to Michigan hatches, hexagenia hatches, brown drakes, Hendricksons, and things like that. But the flies that we use here in Michigan have been used successfully literally all over the world. So the flies themselves and the techniques as well, you're going to be able to make good use of no matter what you're doing or where you're doing it. So we're going to start first of all with the most famous fly in the history of fly tying. It's called the Adams, and we're going to do it in parachute style. So let's go. So we're getting ready to tie our parachute Adams, and I'm going to use just a regular size 12 dry fly hook, any standard 12 dry fly hook, and some black 6/0 thread. Now when we start the thread, we're going to take it back about halfway down the shank and then come back to our post position. Now just a word about that. This is the shank length, and so we're looking at about a third of the way down the length of the shank for the post position. Now you can put that wherever you want, but that's the part I favor. Sometimes when we're looking at the shank, our eye incorporates the entire hook and we misjudge this distance. So when you're first starting out for a while, put your thumbnail right there. This is actually the length of the shank. This is the length of the entire hook. If you want a third of the shank, it should be here. If you want a third of the hook, you're going to have to come down farther. But this is the preferred post position, at least it is for me. So the first thing we're going to do is show the easiest way that I found to put a synthetic post on. And you can use any synthetic you want. There's a whole lot of them on the market. Antron, high-vis, things like that. I'm using a piece of Antron. I doubled it over because we have a size 12 hook. We want a little bit thicker post on a size 12 hook. The simplest way to attach this is simply to lay it on top of the hook and make a couple of wraps over and then pull straight down. Do that 2 or 3 times, 4, 5, 6 wraps. Now your post is secure that way. Now take your scissors and slide it in on an angle and trim that on an angle. That'll allow you to bind these down and make a smoother transition with the body over these butt ends. Now take your thread in front, lift up, just a few wraps, maybe 6, 7 wraps in front, and your post is standing up, maybe one more. Post is standing up now. The next step, excuse me, the next step is to post it. That is to make this secure by wrapping the thread around the base of the upright post now, and that's going to make it more firm, and it's also going to make a path to wrap your hackle on. So the way I do that is I switch my hands. My right hand, I'm right-handed, so this is my working hand, but I'm going to make my left hand now my working hand, and my right hand my off hand. My right hand is going to hold the post while my left hand moves the thread around, and then capture that thread with my middle finger and bring it back and around to my left, around, capture it with my middle finger, back to the left and around. Again, we repeat this maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 times. The simplest way I found to post the parachute post. Now it's secure and it's ready to have hackle wound around it. The easiest way I found to do it. So that's the way we do synthetic, at least the way I do it, the simplest way I found. Now I'm going to show you the easiest way to attach a natural post. We're going to take another size 12 hook, put it in the vise. Again, we'll take our thread about halfway down, and then back to our post position. The easiest material I found to use for posting is deer hair, much superior to calf body hair, and I'm going to show you why. First of all, take a look at this patch of deer hair. And you can find these if you look. The deer hair on this patch has even tips. That eliminates, first of all, the need for stacking. So we're just going to cut a section of that off, and you'll notice I've been working on this a little bit. When you cut off with a natural hair, clip it right down to the hide. If you don't, that material is going to be in your way as you progress forward. So we're just going to clip off a small bunch of deer hair. We don't need a whole lot. And that's going to make our post. Now you can switch hands and turn it over because we want the tips pointing this direction. And if you have a few that are longer, maybe there's one or two, you can just pull them out. Now you've got a post ready to put on. The post is going to be about the length of the shank. So let's lay it on top and bring our thread over a couple times and then pull straight down. And do that maybe twice. So 4 wraps. Now your deer hair is firmly anchored. Again, take your scissors and reach in there with a good angle and snip that on an angle. You'll see what that does. It eliminates most of the butts of the deer hair. It's really easy to wrap it down now, making a smooth transition when we put the body on. Take your thread in front, and maybe 1, 2, 3 wraps, your deer hair stands straight up. Now, if you were using calf body hair, you'd have to do that 12 or 15 times. So another way, to me, deer hair is a superior natural material. Now we're going to post it, just like we did with the synthetic. Switch hands, making my left hand, which was my off hand, now my working hand. My right hand, which was my working hand, now becomes my off hand. I hold the post with my right hand, bring the thread around with my left, and capture it with the middle finger on my right. This procedure, around and capture with the middle finger, around and capture with the middle finger, around and capture with the middle finger. We're going to do that 6 or 7 or 8 times, and then our post is there. We can bind down anything that's showing if that's what you need to do, and then your post is ready to go. The next step in the parachute is putting on the tail. All parachutes have 4 basic components: the post, which we put on, then the tail, then the body, and then the hackle. So next comes the tail. The Adams has a tail made of grizzly and brown, at least it does now. The original had golden pheasant tippet. It was tied in 1922 by a gentleman named Len Halliday over in Mayfield, Michigan, a small town in northern Michigan. And this, as we mentioned before, is the most famous fly in the history of fly fishing. And now mostly it's tied in a parachute style. But to make the tail, the easiest way to do it is to take some of the spade hackles, that's the hackle off to the side of your cape. You'll see that these have a lot longer fibers and stiffer fibers. So those are spade hackles. So you're going to take one from the grizzly and also one from the brown. You'll see these are longer and stiffer. So what I've done is already pre-selected 2, one from a grizzly and one from a brown. The easiest way to make the tail is to lay them on top of each other. Now, you size them out so they're almost exactly the same length. If one's a little bit longer than the other, it's no big deal. But look through your feathers and you'll see what's called the web. You can see that it becomes a little bit darker here, decreasing as you come up the stem. Well, right about there, we're going to get rid of all that webby stuff. What's left over, we can make nice firm tails out of. And just put them on top of each other, stroke them out like this. Now I'm thinking when you tie, you're probably going to want to tie more than one fly during a session. So if you do it this way, you now have enough tail material for maybe a half a dozen flies ready to go right there. And all you have to do now is lay them on, they're laid on top of each other, just stroke out what you need. And when I tie mine using this method, I usually make it a little thicker than most, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. So I take a section about like that. Now you can do this however you want, but there's a reason I make thicker tails. And then just hold it in this hand and simply pull it off. And set the excess off to the side. Now you've got your tail ready to put on. And we're going to measure that again about the length of the shank. And then you switch hands and you capture that in your left. And we're right about where we want to be. Let's just trim those butts a little bit to make that transition nice and neat. Set that in there. And just a few wraps to secure it. Take it all the way back to the bend of the hook. And then come back up to the post. And now your tail is secure. Well, I call it a tail because that's what it's called. But really, on a parachute fly, what I found in my experience of fishing is that it's a great imitation of an emerger. And so, that being the case, this tail, so-called tail, actually is a nice simulation of the cast shuck. That's why I make it a little bit thicker, so that it does a good imitation of that. So now we've got the post on, we've got the tail on. The next step is to put the body on. On this type of fly, we're going to use a dubbed body. The original was done in gray, so we're going to use gray. Lenny Halliday actually tied his Adams when he first started those in several different colors, but gray is the most predominant one. I've got a little dubbing caddy here with several different colors of dubbing in it. And right here is my gray. So we're going to pick out some gray. And one of the most common mistakes people make when they're dubbing, using dubbed bodies, is they use too much material. So just pick out a little bit. It takes far less than you actually think that it takes. And when we put this on the thread, you're going to find just a little adjustment in technique here that might save you some time and improve the integrity of your dubbing. I lay it on like that, and the thread is pre-waxed, so it's stuck in place right now. But in order to secure it, most of the videos I've seen with dubbing, they use the thumb and the forefinger, and that's fine, that works. But to make it more secure, take your middle finger and put it behind your forefinger. It adds tremendous force to the compression, and it makes it go so much faster just down the thread like that. Then you've got enough. Now you've got enough dubbing on here for a size 12 hook. We can wrap the body and go back to the bend and start there, and then just bring it forward in successive wraps, right tight to the last wrap every time. And we'll capture any little mistakes we made before, right up to the post, and then a wrap or two in front of the post, and our body is secure. The next thing to do is to put on the hackle. Parachute hackle is not the same as standard or Catskill style hackle. Parachute hackle needs to be at least one size bigger than you would normally use. To select hackle, here's the easiest way I found to do it. We're going to use grizzly and brown, so let's take a look at our brown first. Here's our brown cape. And when you get used to doing this, you can pick them off in the right size. But I'm going to show you how to make sure that your hackle is the proper size. The first thing we want to do is take a look at this and get rid of most of the web, which starts right about there. So now we've got a usable hackle. So if you want to know if your hackle is the right size for this parachute fly, simply wrap it around the parachute here and see where the ends come out. The ends should come out at least to the bend of the hook. That's the way you can size it every time for a parachute hackle. So that's the proper size for that one. Now we're going to select a grizzly in the same way. And we're going to pick one out of here. These are nice and long. I'll get several flies out of these feathers. And we're going to do the same thing. Take the web off. Get rid of that. Let's size it. Comes out right near the bend of the hook, so that's a perfect size for this parachute. Now we can lay them on top of each other, and it doesn't make any difference which goes where, but I have a tendency to prefer to put the brown on the bottom. That's just what I've always done. It's not necessary, but that's what I've always done. You can just strip off a little bit here, and we're going to secure it at the front of the post. Just in a few wraps like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wraps. Now that hackle's secure. Now you've probably or may have heard that you should wrap each hackle by itself. You can do that if you want, but I've been wrapping both hackles together for many, many years, and they don't come undone. So let's wrap them both together. But when you do parachute, to make the hackle secure, you want to start at the top of this little pathway that you made with your thread on the post. We'll start at the top, and each successive wrap goes underneath the one before, like this. And as you go down, you might want to wiggle this a little bit. It tightens it up, it makes sure it's secure. Each wrap goes beneath the one before, just like this, pulling it snug. And we've got good hackle there, so about 3 wraps with each one is all that we need. Now all we have to do is tie it off. The easiest way I found to tie it off with a parachute is simply hold the fibers back out of the way like this. And then hold it down, hold it right in place. It gives you a clear path to wrap the thread. Just a few times around here, that's secure now. You can let it go. Lift it up, trim the excess, and then we're going to do the whip finish on the head. When we do the whip finish on the head, we're going to need to hold that hackle back out of place again. And we can do that simply by doing this. And take that a few times and make a nice whip finish. When you're done, take your fly out of the vise and see if you have any errant fibers. If you do, just trim them off. That'll allow your fly to float flush on the water. And there you have it. So the finished Adams, a standard a pattern, but think about it this way. Can we take this as a style of fly and imitate any mayfly emerger that there is in the country? The same style, the post, the dub body, the tail, and the hackle, just altering the size of the hook, the color of the thread, and the color of the body, and it becomes anything you want it to be. So that completes the Parachute Adams. The next one in our series of Michigan's Best Trout Flies is a fly called the Parachute Borchers. It's not as well known as the Adams, but it is locally well known and regionally well known. And it's one of the best flies that we have here in Michigan. And it's been used all over the world successfully as well. So we'll see you the next time.